Good evening and welcome once again, friends. My name is Gerald here with Innovate Christian Community Church, located in Kannapolis. We are on here for our 78th Psalm tonight, so if it's your first time, welcome. You get to jump right in with us, right in the middle of the Psalms, pretty much. Don't worry, everything that you may have missed is online on YouTube or on our Facebook page, either one. We're glad to have you, whether you're a first timer or your 78th time. As always, our hope and our prayer is just that you are blessed and encouraged by the word that we get to share here. And let me give you a warning up front. Don't freak out. This one's a long one tonight. It's going to take us a little time, but I think it reads pretty easy. And the way that I look at this one here is it almost gives us, or I won't even say almost, it gives us the history of the Old Testament stories right here in one psalm. Now, I will tell you off the bat, they're not chronologically listed here, but they're all here, or a lot of the stories anyway. So anyway, let's get to the word and see what the Lord has in store for us this evening. This one is entitled, Tell the Coming Generation. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and known that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. And that they should be like their fathers, should not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God. The Ephraimites, armed with the bow, turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep God's covenant, but refused to walk according to his law. They forgot his works and the wonders that he had shown them. In the sight of their fathers he performed wonders in the land of Egypt and the fields of Zoan. He divided the sea and let them pass through it, and made the water stand like a heap. In the daytime he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a fiery light. He split rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink abundantly as from the deep. He made streams come out of the rock, and caused waters to flow down like rivers. Yet they sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, Can God spread a table in the wilderness? He struck the rock so that the water gushed out and streams overflowed. Can he also give bread and provide meat for his people? Therefore, when the Lord heard, he was full of wrath. A fire was kindled against Jacob. His anger rose against Israel, because they did not believe in God and did not trust his saving power. Yet he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven, and he rained down on them manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Man ate of the bread of the angels. He sent them food in abundance. He caused the east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he led out the south wind. He rained meat on them like dust, winged birds like the sand of the seas. He let them fall in the midst of their camp, all around their dwellings. And they ate and were filled, and he gave them what they craved. But before they had satisfied their craving, while the food was still in their mouths, the anger of God rose against them, and he killed the strongest of them, and laid low the young men of Israel. In spite of all this, they still sinned. Despite his wonders, they did not believe. So he made their days vanish like a breath, and their years in terror. When he killed them, they sought him. They repented and sought God earnestly. They remembered that God was their rock, the Most High God their Redeemer. But they flattered him with their mouths. They lied to him with their tongues. Their heart was not steadfast toward him. They were not faithful to his covenant. Yet he, being compassionate, atoned for their iniquity and did not destroy them. He restrained his anger often and did not stir up his wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. They tested God again and again and provoked the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power or the day when he redeemed them from their foe, when he performed his signs in Egypt and his marvels in the fields of Zoan. He turned the rivers to blood so that they could not drink of their streams. He sent among them swarms of flies which devoured them and frogs which destroyed them. He gave their crops to the destroying locust and the fruit to the labor of the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamores with frost. He gave over their cattle to the hail and their flocks to thunderbolts. He let loose on them his burning anger, wrath, indignation, and distress, a company of destroying angels. He made a path for his anger. He did not spare them from death, but gave their lives over to the plague. He struck down every firstborn in Egypt, the firstfruits of their strength in the tents of Ham. Then he led out his people like sheep and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. He led them in safety, so they were not afraid, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And he brought them to this holy land, to the mountain which his right hand had won. He drove out nations before them. He apportioned them for possession, and settled the tribes of Israel in their tents. Yet they tested and rebelled against the Most High God, and did not keep his testimonies, but turned away and acted treacherously like their fathers. They twisted like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places. They moved him to jealousy with their idols. When God heard, he was full of wrath, and he utterly rejected Israel. He forsook his dwelling at Shiloh, the tent where he dwelt among mankind, and delivered his power to captivity, his glory to the hand of the foe. He gave his people over to the sword and vented his wrath on his heritage. Fire devoured their young men, and their young women had no marriage song. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord awoke as from sleep, like a strong man shouting because of wine. And he put his adversaries to rout. He put them to everlasting shame. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loves. He built his sanctuary like the high heavens, like the earth, which he has founded forever. He chose David his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds, from following the nursing ewes. He brought them to shepherd Jacob his people, Israel his inheritance. With upright heart he shepherded them, and guided them with a skillful hand. Whew. So here again we have, as I remind us a lot of times, to share your story, share what God has done for you in your life with the generations that come past you, those that come after you, your grandchildren, your children, their friends, any of these young people that may not have had the experience with God that you have. And here we have Asaph giving the entire history just about of the Israelites, how God had rescued them time and time again, how he fed them with manna from heaven, with birds in the evening that would fall and allow them to eat meat, even though they whined because all they have was bread. He turned around and listened to them and gave them what they asked for, which was meat. So much, I think it made them sick. He gave them water from a rock. He split water so that they could walk through and get away from their enemies. All these things he did for them, and yet time and time again they continued to rebel. They continued to turn away from God. They continued to even question if he cared for them. But friends, how much are we not the same way? How many times does he rescue us? Does he save us? Does he come to our aid? And yet, we too, once we get past that struggle, we kind of put him off to the side too often. We forget what he's done for us. And so therefore, it also helps if you remind those that come after you of what he's done. You're also reminding yourself. You're building up your own faith and reminding yourself of what he's done for you. So friends, I appreciate you staying here with me while I read all, 77 verses or 72 verses. I appreciate you being here with us. And as always, my hope is that you're blessed and encouraged by God's word. And now I challenge you to go share your story of what God has done for you with someone younger than you. And as always, if this is blessed and encouraged you, then share it with somebody else so they too can be blessed and encouraged. And we'll be back on here tomorrow evening reading our 79th Psalm. Friends, have a wonderful day.